It was just another early morning on the open road for the truck driver. He had been driving trucks for years, hauling goods from one city to another, and he knew the life of a trucker was full of long hours and quiet roads. He loved his job in a simple way. It gave him freedom, it gave him time to think, and it gave him a chance to see parts of the country many people never noticed. Today, however, the sky looked different. The sun had barely started to rise, and already dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. He kept his eyes on the road, feeling the slight tremor of wind against his truck. The radio crackled with news, warning drivers of a possible tornado forming nearby. The truck driver had seen bad weather before, storms that forced him to pull over or slow down. But something about the way the clouds twisted today made him uneasy. He had learned long ago that storms could be unpredictable, and it was better to be alert than caught off guard. As he drove, he noticed small signs that the weather was turning dangerous. Leaves were swirling in strange patterns along the roadside. Branches had already broken off from trees and littered parts of the highway. A few cars had slowed down too much or pulled onto the shoulder. He realized quickly that if a tornado came, it would not only be a threat to him but to every person on the road. The driver's mind wandered for a moment. He thought about his family at home, how his kids would ask about his day if he was lucky enough to call in the evening. He thought about the people he had met on his routes, other drivers, small shop owners, and strangers who sometimes needed a helping hand. Helping people had always been a part of who he was, even in little ways. Sometimes it was letting a car merge in front of him on a crowded highway. Sometimes it was helping someone push a broken-down vehicle. Today it seemed like those small acts might not be enough. As the sky darkened further, the first drops of rain began to fall. At first it was light, almost comforting, but quickly it became heavier, lashing against the windshield and sheets. The radio crackled again. The announcer's voice was tense, warning drivers that a tornado had touched down nearby and that they should find shelter immediately. The truck driver's heart began to race, but he stayed calm. Years of driving had taught him that panic would do no good. He knew he had to stay alert and make quick decisions if he wanted to stay safe, and more importantly, if he wanted to help others. As he rounded a bend, he saw it. In the distance, the sky seemed to twist and spin unnaturally. Dust and debris rose in a funnel shape, moving with terrifying speed toward the highway. Cars swerved, tires squealing on wet asphalt. The truck driver could see the fear in the drivers' faces as they tried to get out of the way. Some panicked, some froze, and some did not even realize the danger until it was almost upon them. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, thinking about what he could do. He had a big truck, powerful and sturdy, and he knew that sometimes having the right vehicle at the right time made all the difference. The tornado was moving fast, but so was he, and he understood that in this moment every second counted. As he drove closer to the chaos, he noticed a small car trapped near the shoulder of the road. Its tires were spinning uselessly in mud, and inside a family seemed frozen with fear. They could not drive away, and the tornado was heading straight for them. The truck driver didn't hesitate. He eased his vehicle carefully, positioning it between the car and the approaching storm. The wind howled, slamming the side of his truck, making it shake. Rain lashed against the windshield so hard that it was hard to see. But he kept moving slowly and steadily. The family in the car looked terrified, but when they saw the truck driver, they seemed to realize he was there to help. He lowered his window slightly and shouted over the roar of the wind, telling them to stay calm and follow his instructions. Every movement had to be careful. One wrong turn could send everyone into danger. Step by step, he guided the car away from the most dangerous part of the highway. He used his truck as a shield, putting himself between the family and flying debris. At one point, a tree branch broke off nearby, falling dangerously close, but he stayed focused, knowing that his calm and steady approach was what could keep them alive. When the car was finally in a safer spot, the family got out, wet and shaken but unharmed. The truck driver's heart was still pounding, but he felt relief knowing that, at least for now, they were out of immediate danger. They thanked him repeatedly, but he waved them off. He had learned long ago that helping others was not about praise or recognition. In times like these, what mattered most was keeping people safe. He watched the sky carefully. The tornado was not gone yet. It was moving across the landscape, unpredictable and dangerous. There could be more people in need. Without hesitation, he started driving again, scanning the highway for anyone else in trouble. He had no idea who he might encounter, but he knew he had to be ready for anything. It was in moments like these that the truck driver felt both the weight and the reward of his responsibility. Alone on the road, surrounded by chaos, he realized that courage was not about being fearless. It was about acting even when fear was there. The storm was powerful, but so was the determination to help strangers, to do the right thing even when it was hard. By the time the first part of the storm had passed, the truck driver had already helped several cars reach safety. Each time, the expressions of gratitude reminded him why he kept going, why he never hesitated to act. There was something deeply human about these moments, the connection between strangers, the trust placed in him without words, the shared relief when danger passed. As the rain began to ease, he took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment of quiet reflection. He knew the storm was not completely over, and there might be more people who needed help. But for now, he allowed himself a small sense of satisfaction. He had faced fear and acted with care. He had made a difference, even if it was only for a few lives on this stretch of highway. In his mind, he did not think about being a hero. He thought about being human, about being present, about doing what he could in a moment that mattered. And as he drove on, he could not have known that among the strangers he helped that day was someone whose life and work touched millions. Someone whose gratitude would later shine a light on the quiet courage of a man who simply did what was right. The road ahead was still long, and the storm was far from over, but the truck driver felt ready. He knew he would continue to drive, continue to help, and continue to face whatever came next with steady hands and a steady heart. For him, the day was about more than weather or danger. It was about connection, responsibility, and the quiet strength that comes from choosing to care when it matters most. The tornado was getting closer, moving faster than anyone on the highway expected. The truck driver could see it twisting and turning in the distance, a massive wall of wind and debris that seemed almost alive. Rain and dust whipped against his windshield, making visibility difficult, but he didn't slow down. He had a sense that people might be in danger and that he needed to act quickly. As he drove, he noticed a car struggling near the side of the road. Its tires were spinning in the mud, unable to move. Inside, a small family, 2 adults and a child, looked terrified. The father was trying desperately to start the engine, but it wouldn't budge. The mother held the child tightly, shielding the little one from the pelting rain. The truck driver didn't hesitate. He knew he had to help them. He carefully steered his big truck alongside the car, shielding it from the worst of the wind and flying debris. The tornado was coming closer now, the roar of the wind growing louder, almost deafening. He opened his window just enough to shout instructions to the family over the roar. "Stay calm," he yelled. "I'll get you out of here. Just do exactly what I say." The family nodded frantically, their eyes wide with fear. The father tried to speak, but words were lost in the storm. The truck driver could see the desperation on his face and understood exactly how helpless he must feel. He remembered moments from his own life when he had felt that kind of fear, and how much a helping hand could mean. He backed his truck up slightly, giving the car some room to move. Then he inched forward, using the size and strength of his truck as a barrier between them and the tornado. Branches snapped and flew past, pieces of signs and debris rattling against his cab. Every second counted, and he had to remain focused. One wrong move and everyone could be hurt. He motioned for the father to put the car in neutral and step out carefully. The father obeyed, guiding the mother and child out of the car. Their feet slipped in the mud, and the driver reached out to steady them as best he could. He did not hesitate to put himself in harm's way, because he knew the tornado could change direction in an instant. Once the family was outside the car, he directed them to crouch behind his truck. "Get low, keep your heads down," he shouted, his voice firm but calm. The child clutched the mother tightly, trembling with fear. The father held onto the child's small hand while trying to remain composed. It was a terrifying moment, but the truck driver's steady presence gave them a strange sense of safety. The tornado came closer, spinning faster now, tearing everything in its path. The sound was a deafening roar, like 1,000 freight trains moving at once. The wind bent trees almost to the ground, ripped signs off posts, and sent debris flying dangerously close. The truck shook under the force, but he remained in control, positioning it so that it blocked the worst of the storm from hitting the family. For a few moments it felt as though time had slowed. Rain, debris, and wind surrounded them, and yet the driver's focus never wavered. He kept checking on the family, making sure they were holding on and staying low. He shouted words of encouragement even though the noise made it hard for anyone to hear. His presence alone gave them courage, the courage to endure the storm without panicking completely. Finally, the worst of the tornado passed. Debris continued to fly, but the immediate threat had moved slightly off the road. The truck driver helped the family to their feet, his hands steady and strong, guiding them toward a safer area away from the highway. Each step was careful, deliberate, because the ground was slippery and the rain still poured down in heavy sheets. The mother hugged her child tightly, whispering words of comfort, while the father looked at the driver with immense gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you so much," he said, his voice trembling. "We didn't know what to do." The truck driver simply nodded. "You're safe now. That's what matters," he said. His voice was calm, almost ordinary, but his actions had spoken louder than any words. He did not need praise. In moments like these, recognition was not important. What mattered was that people survived. As they moved toward higher ground, the driver noticed something about one of the passengers. She was calm in a way that was unusual given the chaos around them. She kept her composure, observing carefully but never in a way that suggested fearlessness. It was more like quiet confidence. He didn't know it yet, but this woman's presence would make this day even more remarkable than he could imagine. The family found shelter under an overpass, away from flying debris and water pooling on the road. The truck driver stayed with them, making sure they were truly safe before even thinking of continuing his journey. He checked their condition, scratches, bruises, or signs of shock, but luckily no serious injuries. The tornado had been strong, but thanks to quick thinking and careful action, they had avoided the worst. As the storm continued to rage in the distance, he gave the family some simple instructions. "Stay here until it passes completely," he said. "Help will come soon. Keep low and stay together." He could see the fear still lingering in their eyes, but there was also relief. They had survived something that could have been devastating, and he had helped make that possible. The mother finally found her voice. You saved us," she said softly. "We don't even know who you are, but you risked your life for us." The truck driver smiled faintly, shaking his head. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was the right thing to do." He had learned long ago that the right thing to do often went unnoticed, and that was okay. Acts of kindness didn't need an audience. They needed action. As the tornado moved further away, the driver prepared to continue his journey. He looked back at the family, making sure they were secure. They waved at him, their small gesture of gratitude lingering in the heavy air. He waved back and climbed into his truck, feeling a mixture of relief and quiet pride. Not pride in a boastful sense, but pride in the knowledge that he had helped people survive when danger seemed unavoidable. The road ahead was still challenging. Trees had fallen, water covered parts of the highway, and debris was scattered everywhere. Yet the truck driver drove carefully, aware that the storm might not be completely gone. He had learned that tornadoes could change direction without warning, and he needed to remain alert. While driving, he thought about the family he had helped. He wondered about their lives, their struggles, and their fears. He didn't know it yet, but among the people he had saved was someone whose life and influence would later highlight his courage in a way he could never have imagined. For now, he only knew the satisfaction of doing good in a moment when it mattered most. As the sky began to clear slightly, the rain easing into a drizzle, he reflected on the day. Life on the road was unpredictable, and he had experienced many unexpected moments before, but this one stood out. It wasn't just the danger. It was the connection, the responsibility, and the quiet power of helping others. Even after hours of driving, the image of the family huddled behind his truck stayed with him. The child's small hand gripping the mother's finger, the father's expression of fear and relief, and the woman's quiet composure. It all reminded him why he continued to act with kindness and courage, even when the world seemed dangerous and chaotic. By the time he pulled over at a safe rest area, the storm had passed completely. He sat in the truck for a moment, catching his breath, letting the adrenaline fade. He knew there would be stories on the news, but he didn't care. He had done his part, and that was enough. Sometimes heroism wasn't about recognition. It was about being there when someone needed you most, even if they were complete strangers. The truck driver started the engine again, ready to continue his journey. He didn't yet know that the woman from the family he had just helped was someone very important, someone who would later acknowledge his bravery publicly. But for now, he only cared about the road ahead, the safety of others and the quiet satisfaction that came from doing what was right. He drove on, the storm fading behind him. His thoughts focused not on fame or thanks but on the simple, human act of helping those in need. The tornado had been terrifying, but it had also reminded him of something powerful. That courage, kindness, and humanity could shine brightest in the darkest moments. And as the road stretched out before him, wet but clear, he knew that no matter what came next, he would be ready. After the storm had moved further away, the truck driver continued driving carefully, still scanning the roads for anyone who might need help. The highway was littered with debris, branches, signs, and even parts of vehicles that had been caught by the tornado. Each time he saw someone struggling, he felt a pull in his chest, a reminder that his job didn't end with delivering goods. Sometimes it extended to helping people survive when the world seemed out of control. Not far down the road, he noticed a car pulled over on the shoulder. A woman was standing outside holding a map in one hand and a phone in the other, looking confused and worried. She seemed stranded, and the truck driver could see that the storm had made her situation more dangerous. He slowed his truck and pulled over a safe distance away. "Do you need help?" he called out, keeping his voice calm over the sound of the wind still rattling the trees. The woman looked up, relief washing over her face. "Yes, please, I don't know if my car will make it. The road is blocked and the weather. It's getting worse," the truck driver nodded. "All right, let's get you somewhere safe first. I'll help you with your car and then we can figure out the rest." He knew that even though the tornado had moved on, the storm could still be unpredictable. Flash floods, falling branches, and damaged roads were dangers he couldn't ignore. He guided the woman's car to a clearer section of the road, using his truck to shield it from falling debris and muddy water. The woman's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel, but he kept talking to her, giving clear instructions and offering reassurance. "You're doing fine. Just stay calm, keep moving slowly. I've got your back," he said. Once the car was in a safer spot, he got out and helped the woman step carefully onto the shoulder of the road. She was soaked from the rain, and her clothes clung uncomfortably to her body, but she smiled faintly, grateful for his help. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. "You don't need to thank me," the truck driver replied, shaking his head. "I just do what anyone should do when someone is in danger. That's all." For a moment, the two of them stood in silence, listening to the wind whipping through the trees and the occasional distant sound of debris still moving along the highway. It was a tense, fragile calm, the kind that comes after a storm when everything is uncertain but the immediate danger has passed. The woman glanced at him, curiosity in her eyes. You really don't care who you help, do you? It could be anyone, and you still put yourself at risk." He smiled faintly. "It's not about who. It's about people being alive, being safe. That's what matters." Her expression softened, almost as if she had been reminded of something long forgotten. She looked around, taking in the damage from the storm, the trees bent, signs torn from posts and the muddy roads, and then back at him. There was a quiet admiration there, though she didn't say it out loud. The truck driver helped her into the passenger side of his truck. "Stay inside," he said. "I'll get you through this stretch. The road ahead is still risky, but we can handle it together." As they drove, the woman said very little at first, mostly observing, but the truck driver noticed something in her demeanor. She was calm in a way that didn't come from ignorance of danger. It came from experience. She watched the road carefully, listening to his instructions, moving only when he guided her. She asked practical questions when necessary, but mostly, she seemed to trust him completely. It was a simple human connection, a stranger helping another stranger in a moment of uncertainty, neither expecting anything in return except safety. For the truck driver, moments like these were why he continued to do what he did. The storm might be powerful, but people were stronger when they worked together, even if only for a few minutes on a muddy, dangerous road. A few miles down the highway, they encountered another family stranded in a car. This time it was a couple with a young child, their vehicle stuck in mud, wheels spinning uselessly. The tornado had left the area, but the storm's aftermath had made the highway dangerous and difficult to navigate. Without hesitation, the truck driver stopped again. He guided the family carefully, using his truck to protect them from fallen branches and flooding along the road. He could see the fear in the child's eyes, the panic in the parents' faces, and he moved quickly to reassure them. Follow me, he instructed, pointing to a safer stretch ahead. Stay behind my truck. I'll get you through this. Step by step, the family moved, careful not to slip in the mud or get too close to the edges of the road. The truck driver stayed close, helping whenever needed, steadying hands, offering words of encouragement and making sure the child didn't become overwhelmed by fear. When the family finally reached a safer area, they hugged each other tightly, the relief palpable. The mother looked at the truck driver, eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you." "Thank you for saving us," she said, her voice shaking. He waved her off gently. "Just be safe now. That's what matters." As he watched them move to a more secure location, he noticed the woman who had been riding with him from earlier glancing at him. There was something different about her expression now, a quiet intensity, a sense that she understood what he had done without needing words. It wasn't admiration or curiosity alone. It was respect, the kind that comes when someone sees real courage in action. They continued down the highway, now more cautious than ever. The tornado had passed, but the storm's effects remained. Fallen trees blocked parts of the road and water pooled in large muddy patches. The truck driver navigated carefully, his eyes scanning for any signs of further danger. Every now and then he would spot someone stranded or struggling, and each time he stopped to help. It was exhausting work, physically and mentally, but he didn't let it slow him down. He thought about the people he had helped and the relief he had seen in their eyes. Those moments of human connection were what made it all worthwhile. The smiles, the words of thanks, the simple acknowledgement that someone cared when it mattered most. The woman riding with him finally spoke again, breaking the silence. "You've been helping so many people all day. I can't imagine doing what you're doing. You're remarkable." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "I don't do it for compliments. I do it because it's the right thing to do. Anyone would if they had the chance." She was quiet for a moment, as if thinking about what he had said. Then she nodded slowly, a quiet understanding passing between them. There was a subtle bond forming, one built on trust, courage, and shared humanity. In a way, the storm had brought them together, not just as strangers in danger, but as witnesses to each other's character. As the rain began to ease and the sky lightened slightly, the truck driver allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The storm's worst had passed, and most of the people he had helped were now in safer places. But he knew that his job wasn't over. There could still be others stranded, others in danger, and he needed to remain vigilant. Driving on, he reflected on the day's events. It had been terrifying, exhausting, and unpredictable, but it had also been deeply human. People had relied on him, trusted him, and in return he had acted without hesitation. There was no recognition, no applause, no reward, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that lives had been protected. Unbeknownst to him, the woman he had helped earlier was someone significant. She had remained calm, confident, and observant during the storm, and her life and work would later make the truck driver's actions even more meaningful. For now, he didn't know her identity, and he didn't need to. All that mattered was the safety of the people in front of him and the responsibility he carried on the road. By the time he pulled into a rest area for a short break, he was soaked, tired, and emotionally drained. But there was a quiet sense of accomplishment in his chest. He had faced fear and danger head-on, helped multiple families survive, and acted with courage when it mattered most. Those moments would stay with him, reminders of what it meant to be human, compassionate, brave, and willing to act in the face of uncertainty. As he sat in his truck, letting the engine idle, he thought about the road ahead. The storm had changed everything around him, the highway, the landscape, even the people he had helped. But it had also reinforced something fundamental. Heroism wasn't about recognition. It wasn't about titles or fame. It was about showing up, helping others, and making a difference in the moments when it counted most. And as he prepared to continue his journey, he couldn't know that the woman riding with him, calm and composed despite the chaos, was someone whose influence would later shine a light on his quiet bravery. For now all that mattered was the road, the people around him, and the simple, human truth that helping others was worth every risk, every moment of fear, and every drop of sweat. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a landscape that looked almost unrecognizable. Trees were uprooted, signs torn from their posts, and debris scattered across the highway as far as the eye could see. The truck driver carefully drove through the aftermath, his eyes scanning every corner for anyone still in danger. The winds had calmed, but the damage was clear, and the highway was a chaotic mix of mud, broken branches, and stranded vehicles. He pulled over at a safer spot, parking his truck on a small rise above the flooded sections of the road. He stepped out, the cool air mixed with the earthy scent of rain and mud filling his senses. His clothes were soaked, his boots caked in mud, and his hands still shook slightly from the adrenaline of the earlier moments. But even as exhaustion settled in, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had helped people survive, and that feeling was worth more than anything else. From his vantage point, he could see some of the families he had helped earlier moving toward safer areas. The child he had guided was holding the mother's hand tightly, both of them glancing back at the truck driver with expressions of gratitude that needed no words. The woman who had ridden with him earlier was standing nearby, speaking with another stranded motorist, her composure calm but firm. The truck driver realized that the people he had assisted were now safe, at least for the moment. Emergency services were starting to arrive, police, fire trucks, and rescue teams moving along the highway, assessing the damage and helping those still stranded. The truck driver watched as a group of officers approached one of the damaged vehicles. A small crowd had gathered, some shaken, some injured, but everyone was beginning to receive the help they needed. The truck driver felt a quiet humility. He had done what he could, and now the professionals were taking over. He didn't seek recognition. He had never done so, but he noticed the looks of curiosity and even admiration from some of the officers who had observed him helping the families earlier. They didn't know his name, of course, but they had seen his actions, and that alone seemed to make an impression. He took a moment to catch his breath, leaning against his truck, letting his mind wander. Driving through storms, helping strangers, and facing unpredictable danger had always been part of his life, but today had felt different. The scale of the storm, the number of people affected, and the intensity of the tornado had tested him in ways he hadn't experienced before. And yet he had acted without hesitation, guided by instinct and a sense of responsibility that had been with him since he first started driving long hauls. As he reflected, he thought about the strangers he had helped, the small family huddled behind his truck, the woman who had ridden with him, and the couple with the child whose car had been stuck in the mud. Each one had left an impression on him, not because of who they were, but because of the shared experience of surviving something terrifying. Those moments of connection, even brief and unspoken, had a power all their own. He decided to walk a short distance along the highway, checking for anyone else who might need help. Mud squelched under his boots as he moved carefully, watching for signs of distress. At one point, he spotted a car that had skidded off the road slightly, its driver trying to push it back onto the highway. He approached quickly. "Need a hand?" he asked. The driver looked up, startled but relieved. "Yes. I don't know how to get out of this." He helped guide the car back onto the road, steadying it and giving instructions. Once the car was secure, the driver waved him off, their relief clear. It was a small victory in a day filled with larger challenges, but it was meaningful nonetheless. Each person he helped was another life that could continue safely, and that was what mattered most. Walking back toward his truck, he noticed the woman he had helped earlier standing a short distance away. She was speaking quietly to someone on her phone, giving instructions and details about the road conditions. She noticed him and nodded, her expression calm but appreciative. He returned the nod, keeping his distance but feeling a quiet sense of connection. He climbed back into his truck, tired but alert. The highway ahead was still littered with obstacles, but it was clear that the worst had passed. As he drove, he thought about how unpredictable life could be. One moment, everything seemed normal. The next, a storm could appear and change everything. And in those moments, the choices people made, whether to panic, flee, or help others, were what defined them. The truck driver realized that today had been a test not just of skill, but of character. He had faced fear and acted decisively, putting himself at risk to help strangers who couldn't have known him from anyone else. There was a humility in that action, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing he had done the right thing without expectation of reward. As he continued down the road, he saw more people being assisted by emergency crews. Some were calling loved ones. Others were being directed to temporary shelters. The driver felt a sense of relief that the situation was being handled, but he also knew that his actions had mattered in the critical moments before help arrived. Those few minutes of courage and quick thinking could have been the difference between safety and disaster for the families he had helped. He reflected on the woman who had ridden with him earlier. There had been something different about her, a quiet strength that had stood out even in the chaos of the storm. He had noticed her calm, her composure, and the way she observed without panic. Little did he know she was someone whose work affected millions, someone who would later make his actions publicly known. But for now, she was just another human being in need, and he had done what he could to help her survive the storm. Driving through the aftermath, he felt a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. His body ached from the tension of the day, but his mind was clear, focused on the simple truth that helping others was always worth the effort. The storm had tested him, but it had also reaffirmed his belief in human connection and the importance of acting with courage when it mattered most. By the time he reached a small rest area, the sun was beginning to peek through the clouds. The air was fresher, the rain slowing to a drizzle, and the sounds of emergency crews working filled the quiet spaces where the storm had left silence. He parked his truck, took a deep breath, and let himself relax for a moment. The road ahead was still long, but the immediate danger had passed. He watched the families he had helped earlier moving toward safety, their figures small against the wide, muddy landscape. The child waved at him, the parents nodding with gratitude. The woman who had ridden with him stood a short distance away, finally hanging up her phone and looking toward him. There was a moment of silent acknowledgement between them, a shared understanding of what had just happened. The truck driver climbed back into his cab, feeling a quiet sense of humility. He had acted out of instinct, responsibility, and compassion, not expecting recognition or reward. And yet the impact of his actions was clear in the relief and gratitude of those he had helped. It was a powerful reminder that heroism often comes in small, quiet moments, unnoticed by the world but deeply felt by those affected. As he prepared to continue his journey, he thought about the day ahead and the miles still to cover. The storm had changed the landscape, altered the lives of the people he had helped, and tested his own courage. But it had also reminded him of something important, that kindness, courage, and humanity could shine brightest in moments of uncertainty and fear. Driving away from the rest area, he didn't yet know the significance of the woman he had helped. He didn't know that she was someone who would later bring his actions to light, someone whose acknowledgement would make his quiet bravery known beyond the roads he traveled. But for now, he only knew the satisfaction of having helped people survive, of having acted decisively when it mattered most, and of having remained calm and focused in the face of danger. The highway stretched out before him, muddy but passable, and he drove on with steady hands and a steady heart. He thought about the families, the strangers, and the shared moments of fear, courage, and relief. Those memories would stay with him, quiet reminders of the power of acting with compassion and bravery when the world seemed most unpredictable. And as he drove, he realized that the storm had done more than test his driving skills or courage. It had reaffirmed his belief in humanity. That even in the worst circumstances, people could survive, could help each other, and could act with integrity and care. Today had been a dangerous day, but it had also been a day of connection, of quiet heroism, and of moments that reminded him why he did what he did every day on the road. The highway was quiet now. The storm had fully passed, leaving behind a landscape that looked almost peaceful compared to the chaos it had caused just hours before. Muddy water glistened under the sunlight, and broken branches lay scattered across the roadside. The truck driver drove slowly, carefully avoiding debris and keeping an eye out for anyone who might still need help. The adrenaline of the past hours had faded, replaced by a deep, quiet exhaustion, but also a sense of fulfillment. He had helped multiple families survive the tornado, guided stranded drivers to safety, and kept his own calm even in moments when fear could have taken over. And now, as he drove through the aftermath, he reflected on everything that had happened. Every decision, every action, every risk he had taken had mattered. People's lives had depended on him, even if he had never thought of himself as a hero. As he passed one of the safer areas where emergency crews were assisting survivors, he noticed a familiar face among the people he had helped. It was the woman who had ridden with him during the storm, the one whose calm presence had stood out even amid chaos. She approached him cautiously, her expression a mixture of relief, gratitude, and something he couldn't quite place. "Excuse me," she called, her voice steady but sincere. I don't know if you remember me, but you helped me back there on the road. During the storm, he nodded, smiling faintly. I remember. You were very brave, too. You stayed calm, followed instructions, and kept your composure. It made my job easier. She laughed softly, a sound of both relief and disbelief. I don't think I've ever met anyone like you. You helped so many people today, strangers, people who didn't know you from anyone else. You risked your life to make sure they were safe. The truck driver shrugged modestly. I just did what anyone should do. People needed help, and I could provide it. That's all. She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. Well, not everyone would have done what you did. Most people would have thought only about themselves, but you stepped up when it mattered most. For a moment, the truck driver didn't respond. There was a quiet weight to her words. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary. He had simply acted as he believed a human being should act, help others when they are in danger. But hearing it from someone else, especially someone who had seen the storm and its effects firsthand, made him pause and consider the impact of his actions. I just did what felt right, he said finally. I don't do it for recognition. I just try to help. The woman nodded, understanding. Then she hesitated before speaking again, her expression thoughtful. I think the world needs more people like you. People who act without expecting anything in return. People who help when it's hard, not just when it's easy. He felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet pride that was entirely different from vanity. It wasn't about being praised or noticed. It was about knowing that he had done good when it counted. He looked around at the aftermath of the storm, the families he had helped, the vehicles he had guided to safety, and the emergency crews now taking over, and felt a deep sense of peace. As they talked, a small group of people approached. Among them were some of the families he had helped earlier. Their faces lit up when they saw him, expressions of relief and gratitude shining through the mud and exhaustion. The little child he had guided waved shyly, while the parents nodded, mouths open as if they wanted to say so much but couldn't find the words. You saved us, the father said simply, his voice full of emotion. We wouldn't have made it without you. The mother added, I don't know how to thank you enough. You were there when we needed you most. The truck driver shook his head, smiling faintly. I'm just glad you're safe. That's what matters. The woman standing beside him, still composed and calm, stepped forward and addressed the small crowd. This man risked his own safety to help all of us. We were strangers to him, and yet he acted without hesitation. That kind of courage and kindness is rare, and it should be recognized. The truck driver's heart sank slightly. Recognition had never been his goal. He had acted because it was the right thing to do, not to be noticed or celebrated. But as he looked at the faces of the people around him, he realized that acknowledgement wasn't the same as pride. They were simply grateful, and their gratitude was enough. Then the woman paused and looked directly at him. I should probably tell you something, she said quietly. Her tone was calm but carried a weight that immediately caught his attention. I'm a U.S. Senator. The words hung in the air for a moment, and the truck driver blinked in surprise. For a second, he didn't know how to respond. The